Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So we had another big news release for Path of Exile 1 today around the Legacy of Frisia. Now, looking at this, this is looking like it's going to be much bigger than what we think it is, and I sort of like the idea of these cutting room floor leagues, but there's a few things in here that I sort of perused through when I was at work that I don't know, they're saying that it's not Path of Exile 2 testing, but I get the impression that it sort of is in a little bit, or maybe in the essence of it. But anyway, let's talk through it anyway, and let's go through it. So we'll go through the last or the new 3 Ascendancies at the very end of the video, and we might do like a quick cover off, but we'll basically go through and do a deep dive. I think we'll deep dive each one of these one by one. But yeah, anyway, let's talk about the main substance of the actual league itself. Okay, so when is the league event? We have absolutely no idea at this stage from what we can see here. So as far as we know, this could probably, I would estimate, come out close to the end of the PoX League. And the reason why is the PoX League, the community actually put up quite a bit of money. And I think we're about 8 days in, 9 days in, something like that. So I'd say this will probably drop in about 2 to 3 weeks, or maybe 2.5 weeks, something like that. Now, I'm sort of the impression too that this is a bit of like a time save situation. So basically, Path of Exile 2, we haven't had any news about. We're just getting Path of Exile 1 news because it's the stuff they can do. I would assume this is like a little bit of buying time. Reading some of the comments on this too in the X post, there's some totally savage things being said. So what I'd probably say is just like people need to calm down a bit. Like it's not like Path of Exile 1 versus Path of Exile 2 like some people are pitching and whatnot. At the end of the day, like we're all just one community. We need to just chill a little bit. But anyway, so the event I would say would be like 2 to 3 weeks away, which means the Path of Exile 2 0.2 patch is probably like maybe 5 weeks away, 4 to 5 weeks away. They're gonna like give you at least like 2 weeks into this before they do anything with Path of Exile 2, because that could detract from their Path of Exile 2 audience. So they're gonna try and split these releases up. Now, to sort of talk about the next part of the FAQ that came out today, we sort of have to look at what the idol system is. So basically, in the event, it'll feature a new system for specializing in endgame content, replacing the existing Atlas passive tree. As you progress endgame, you'll find idols which can be placed into a new tab on the map receptacle UI to modify your maps. Now, oddly enough, they're sort of saying this isn't going to be a Path of Exile 2 mechanic, but it sort of feels like this is a Path of Exile 2 mechanic in the making. Now, it does say in the FAQ, and we'll get to that, this is not a permanent change to the game, and I think we need to clarify that as well. So the idol system is just something new that they're testing out, and I dare say this very much looks like something they could do with like Waystone modification and stuff like that in Path of Exile 2. In fact, this would be a really good and easy way to get rid of like the whole issue with like towers and stuff. So like some people are like, oh, this isn't like going to be considered for PoE 2, but like let's really unpick this. This looks like something that you would put in Path of Exile 2. So anyway, doesn't really matter at the end of the day, not really. Like it's a cool and interesting mechanic. So basically, when you put a map in, you're going to have idols that you then also opt to put into your maps. So magic idols can have up to 2 modifiers. Rare idols can have up to 4 modifiers, and there are unique idols for keystones from the Atlas passive skill tree. Idols are tradable, but they are not modifiable, so they just drop as they are. Now, this is actually very similar to the Legacy League. And I dare say this is probably very much based off of the original Legacy League. And if you don't know what Legacy League is, basically like it allowed you to play like previous league mechanics in the game. And it's also when like the vault that you can go into for like a single unique item drop or whatever was first introduced to the game. So basically, it looks basically like Legacy League. Like it's basically a Legacy League where they're calling it Legacy League. So these are some of the idols that can drop. So Abyss cracks in the map, and it gives you like multiple like things that can trigger on your maps. Your maps have 33% chance to contain Ina. What I really do see here is some issues with basically like, yeah, you're gonna have all these random modifiers and whatever. I feel like this is just like a totally randomized sort of thing. This does look like something that's in Path of Exile 2 the more that I look at this. It just looks like something you would put into it. Crop rotation, minor idle. Harvest crops in your maps contain only one tier of plants. Harvest crops in your maps have a chance to upgrade the tier of plants of different colors, unmodifiable. What's really interesting as well is like there's art for this already. So they were like dead serious about releasing this at some point in time, and I feel like this was just like pulled out of production, or they have actually done something with this for the next game, and they're just sort of saying that it's not related to Path of Exile 2, but it could very well be. This sort of does feel like it. Just every time I look at this, it does sort of look like a Path of Exile 2 mechanic. Then they basically stated this is a drastic change to how the end game plays, given the Atlas tree has been such a fundamental part of the end game. The Atlas tree allows you control. This takes that away and it makes it like a tradable currency. And this is like good for an event, but I think this will be a bit of fun for the event, and then the novelty will wear off pretty quickly. One of the major changes is that it turns specializing into different leagues to be less deterministic because it relies on you finding items. I don't necessarily like that, because I sort of like deterministic abilities to be able to control your outcomes. This allows you to have infinite number of different endgame loadouts for content. No more respecing your tree at all. Now just take out the idols you want and put in the ones you do. You probably end up with a set of idols. You'll probably end up with a set of idols for each league. With the Atlas, so they just stay in the cache the whole time. So the idols actually don't deplete. There's no uses. Yeah, okay, this is actually not too bad. Anyway, so basically, yeah, and they just keep getting more and more elaborate as you go. So like for me, I would be getting like Delve, like Delirium. This is probably maybe a little bit more powerful than the Atlas tree, than what we've seen in the past. But basically, so the idea would be you would fill this whole thing with idols. This is sort of like relics or like whatnot that we see in like Last Epoch and stuff like that. So, and then they'll take up like space in here depending on the size. And in fact, this is actually very similar to like the Trials of Sekhmet and Path of Exile 2 anyway. Or very similar to how relics work in Sanctum, essentially. But anyway, it's an interesting mechanic, something different. But anyway, in understanding this, now we can talk about the FAQ. Okay, so they further go into how powerful are idols, what is the expected amount of juicing compared to the Atlas tree. Idols can be found as either magic or rare items. They are unmodifiable, but each item is approximately 2 to 3 times the power of the corresponding Atlas tree node. Not all stats are reflective of this, however. For example, if you had a 100% chance to have strong boxes to be reopened, you'd be opening the same strong box all day. So in some cases, the stats are more conservative values. In other cases, they're higher, like being able to find ritual rerolls and whatnot. I actually think that this isn't too bad. Like, I think this could be a lot of fun, and we could juice way more mechanics this way. But we'll see how we go. How do the idols drop, and how often are we expected to find the idols? Idols are in the core drop pool and will start dropping at endgame. They completely scale with juicing, and there is also a static drop chance of 50% for them to drop from the final map boss in maps to alleviate randomness. It is not intended that you are at the whims of randomness to find these, as they are the gateway to fun. As you further into the end game and start applying more juice to your maps, you'll be able to find more and more of these, certainly getting many per map. So I would assume these also drop in like mechanics like Delve and within mechanics themselves and whatnot. The other thing that I'd probably assume is there's going to be like really cracked combinations that people are going to find. So be a chance to look out for like really, really juiced modifiers. Like potentially we could totally abuse Magic Find and stuff like that with this mechanic if it's powerful enough, but we'll see how we go with that. Arguably, like, we could create some totally stupid combinations, and this could really lead into some lucrative ways. And also those like we'll have to look out for particular idol rolls, that because they're not modifiable, right? So you'll be wanting to look out for particular idol rolls at the end of the day that will be selling for a lot on the market, because now we're basically creating an economy for your Atlas passive tree, which is very interesting. Is the idol system replacing the Atlas tree? So they said only during the event. It is an old throwaway idea we didn't think would be good enough to replace the Atlas tree. And I agree with that. It's not really good enough to replace the Atlas tree. The Atlas tree is really good. For this event, we wanted to create an almost alternate reality Wraeclast vibe, and thought this would be an interesting experience alongside the alternate Ascendancy class ideas. After the event, we'll be adding the alternate Ascendancy classes and alternate endgame idols to the private league list so that people can have leagues. I don't know. I actually think like they should maybe take some notes from this. I am not negative to more ascendancies being added to the game to create some diversity in builds. And I think like this is a really invigorating way to like get new players in a Path of Exile 1 and also to create whole new builds. Like this is a total meta shake up essentially in a private league, and I don't think it's bad. Like when we talk about the Ascendancies at the end of the video briefly, I think like they're creative and they bring back some of the core essence of what Path of Exile was about. And if basically like I don't know why they didn't run with some of the Ascendancy ideas that they are going at. Maybe they're too like specific, but like these are the sort of things that we want in Path of Exile 1. I don't think this is like ruining the game, but I think there's some notes that they can take away from this, and it takes away from the how the game's been positioned for so long and shakes everything up again. The idle mechanic seems to be one that is lacking quality of life features. Given the feedback, are you considering improving this? Would you consider adding it during the event? Yes, the original intention is to be able to deliver an event quickly to give something new and fresh to play to help fill the time until we can deliver an expansion. Given the popularity and feedback of this event, we've decided to develop these other. Like, I think this, honestly, like, they could do something like this as a league and people will like it because it's a fun idea. And I think, like, part of the problem with Path of Exile 1 is, like, we're so serious about how it works all the time, but adding some random stuff into it is not a bad idea to create a bit of, like, diversity in how the game plays. So it's good to see that they're taking the feedback on board. Like, there's an enormous player base for Path of Exile 1. Whether or not there is a divide in the community, like, who really cares at this stage? There's a ton of people that will come back to play this event because it's fun, it's a refresh, and it's something different before 3.26. Based on what I've seen so far, Path of Exile 1 is very far from a dead game based on what some people are surmising, and I think this game will be around for many more years to come despite Path of Exile 2's popularity. Is there a meta system to the idle mechanic? Yes, initially there are locked slots, similar to relics from Sanctum. You can unlock these slots by completing the same content that unlocks favored slots. So this is just like exactly like Sanctum. The more you progress it, the more it's going to sort of level up, the more you're going to be able to juice, and you get a total of 32 slots at the very end of it. So that's pretty good. Are there any rewards for participating in the event? We will release a video for an armor set you'll be able to earn by achieving level thresholds, and that's pretty standard. For level 30 to attain all 4 pieces of the set armor. That's pretty good. Free MTX people, log in, and that MTX will be most likely usable in Path of Exile 2 eventually. So for those Path of Exile 2 players, if you want free MTX, this is a good way to get it. Is the content being used as a testing ground for future expansions for Path of Exile 2? Not at all. As mentioned, this was throwaway ideas in past development. We have no. I don't believe that, and the reason why I don't believe that is because if this is successful and people like this, and notoriously they've used Path of Exile 1 for testing mechanics for Path of Exile 2, they may turn around and change their position. And also, to quantify my position on that is this comment up here. They wanted to deliver something quickly, but then realized the positive feedback from the community and then ebbed and flowed with that and adjusted for that. I feel like this system may actually be a pretty good system to put into Path of Exile 2 later down the track, and would actually be a pretty good supplement for like, the towers and whatnot. I actually think this is way better than the towers that are currently in Path of Exile 2, and it would create a lot more fluid flow of sort of gameplay and whatnot. But anyway, I think this is like they have to say this to not upset or stir the community. But I do genuinely think like they're going to be taking notes from this and going, hey, actually, some of this cutting room floor stuff's pretty good, and they might encompass it into the game. I think this is actually really creative. And to be honest with you, this is some of the stuff that I would have expected to see in Path of Exile 2 in the first place. But, that's my opinion. There are concerns that 1 month isn't long enough. Would you consider running the event or some deviation of it again? They're completely open to running additional events in the future using these based on your feedback. We're also open to extending the duration to give players more time to experiment and find all the broken builds. So they're okay with us breaking builds. That's good. They're not going to like hotfix stuff most likely. The intention here was to help fill time until we can deliver. Like, I think this will actually be quite successful, to be honest with you, and probably will draw a lot of the players back in for Path of Exile 1. We'll probably have a pretty big player uptick for this. That's something that they're probably banking on, and they likely will come out with an extension because this is an easy cover off for trying to find more time. And this is definitely one way to do that quite effectively. So they'll probably find that by themselves another like 1 or 2 months. And then basically that'll give them a little bit of breathing room to get onto Path of Exile 2 and to the 3.26 League. And it's very likely they'll also make adjustments to the 3.26 League based on what people are sort of feeding back from this. Obviously, things like Settlers of Kalgur and whatnot will probably go core in the 3.26 League as well, but in probably a bit of a different form, which follows the track record of GGG. I actually don't think this is a bad position, and it does restore a bit of my faith in GGG because the abyss that we've been dealing with communicatively with the devs has been a bit bad recently. So, you know, in one way it gives time, breathing room for Path of Exile 2, but it also gives the Path of Exile 1 player base that's heavily supported Path of Exile 2 throughout its development stage a bit more to chew down on. And for new players to Path of Exile that got into Path of Exile 2, there's no reason why you couldn't pick this event up and have some fun. I'm sure there'll be plenty of build guides and stuff that we'll work on, and failed builds and or cool builds and stuff like that, and a fully working economy. So I would recommend any Path of Exile 2 player who sort of announces PoE 1 to give it a shot in this event. You'll probably find it's quite fun. Atlas nodes close to the tree. Origin bias hard towards map sustain. Will there be anything similar in Legacy of Frisia? We've added an implicit modifier to the idols that grant maps increased map chance drop. So this is just your map sustain. And you also get that increased drop rate when you're doing like the quests on the maps anyway. So when you complete like magic, rare, and whatnot maps. And beyond that point, like if you just go down and delve at like 100, you get tons of map drops. Anyway, will the effect of the Atlas blocker nodes such as the Black Thumb uh, your maps cannot contain harvest and cannot drop harvest scarabs be available. There will be unique idols. I'll say some of the unique idols will probably be pretty OP. I don't think they're going for balance in this. I think they're just going for fun. And quite frankly, I like that direction because, yeah, it's where Path of Exile needs to really go. Will Legacy of Frisia be parented to the Settlers League? It will be, so we'll still have to rebuild our city again, or town. I don't think that's bad. When your characters are migrated out of the league, their ascendancy points are respect, and you'll be assigned one of the core ascendancy classes. Okay, that's fair enough. Given that this is using Settlers League as a base, do we need to do all the town upgrades again, as it's becoming tiring? Yes. We will be making early upgrades, in particular, cheaper in Settlers League, including this event and core leagues, to streamline the process. So it just means you'll be able to upgrade quicker so you can get access to all the upgrades and cool stuff that's in Settlers, because Settlers is, quite frankly, one of the best leagues that Path of Exile has ever seen. Overall, like, this is really good. I think this is pretty cool, and as a Path of Exile 1 player, and now Path of Exile 2 player, I really like this. Like, where I want to see this go is you play Path of Exile 1 for, like, 2 months, then you play Path of Exile 2 for 2 months, and then you play Path of Exile 1 for 2 months, so on and so on, rinse and repeat. And I think that's a good balance, especially for a core Path of Exile player, but you know, I know there's a bit of fracturing in the community right now. There are like rage bait posters and stuff like that that are saying, oh, you know, pick a side, or, you know, this is rubbish. Like, you know, we should be like focusing on Path of Exile 2. But I think like this hits us, or it strikes a mark with a big part of the core audience. And, you know, there's no reason why PoE 2 players couldn't try Path of Exile 1 for a little while. It's probably a bit of a palate cleanse. But yeah, this is also indicating that they're not turfing Path of Exile 1, and they're aware that there's a big player base. And it's sort of like, sorry guys, we need to get our stuff together, and here's something to keep you busy in the meantime while we do exactly that. And I can respect that. You know, they worked pretty quickly to get this up and running as well, because they identified that there was a massive issue. And you know what? This is a pretty good move overall. Anyway, let's talk about some ascendancies. Okay, so the first one we've got is Daughter of Oshabi, which is the Ranger. So we've got Forest Tracking, 2% increased attack damage per 450 evasion. Rare and unique enemies within 150 meters have mini-map icons. This is actually from a previous league, Affliction League from memory. this is pretty cool if you're doing like Queen of the Forest stacking. So I would say Queen of the Forest builds, 100%. It's going to be really powerful. Oath of the Magi defenses from equipped body armor are doubled if it has no sockets in it. Again, Queen of the Forest builds. 60% to all elemental resistances if you have an equipped helmet with no socket gems. Again, this is from one of the, I think not the Warden class, was the Warden class? Can't remember the classes out of Affliction, but this is basically Affliction. Again, Illuminating Wisp, +2 to maximum number of Sacred Wisp, +2 to number of Sacred Wisp summon. So Wisp summoning, that's going to be really interesting. Spell slinging skills supported by spell slinger have 50% increased cooldown recovery. Skills supported by spell slinger have 50% reduced mana reservation. That's interesting. They say reduced mana reservation. So that's an old stat. That's not a new stat. Reduced mana reservation was changed to mana reservation efficiency quite a number of years ago. So this has been around for some time. Like this is not a new thing. This has been around for a little while. I know that probably are some there are some gear items that have reduced mana reservation as well, which are a little bit more legacy. But yeah, this is a pretty old stat to be putting into the Atlas tree, so or into the passive tree as an ascendancy point. So this has been around for a little while, from what I can see here. Roots of the Grove. All damage inflicts poison against enemies affected by at least five grasping vines. Inflict one grasping vine on hit. This is like, I don't know. This is actually pretty cool. This is Nature's Patience. So, or yeah, Natural Affinity it's called. It's a jewel that usually affects the player, but it actually affects the enemies and slows them down. So this could be a really cool, like you could play like a crazy ass like Spellslinger build like EK Spellslinger or something like that. And that could actually be really cool. Woodland Shrines, trigger, level 20, create lesser shrine when you kill it. That's freaking OP. That's the Gull. That's from an item called the Gull in Path of Exile. So that's actually really cool and quite powerful as well, especially for early leveling. Gain a random shrine buff every 10 seconds. This is going to be abused. Like, this is totally going to be abused. I feel like I want to abuse this. Spell slinging and innate blessing seem freaking OP, as well as woodland shrines. Basically means you have constant shrine actives, and that's pretty OP. Now, the other thing you could do, like Queen of the Forest, with forest tracking and woodland shrines, and that'd be pretty cool. Or something with like Roots of Grove and then Oath of the Magi. This sort of, if this sort of linked up here, this would be a lot better, to be honest with you. And this would allow you to like take forest tracking in either direction that you went, which would be a lot more useful for like Roots of the Grove and forest tracking to be used in synergy with woodland shrines and innate blessing. So, you know, if they did revise this, I would recommend just like linking these up. And these Ascendancies seem a little bit more simplistic versus some of the Ascendancies in Path of Exile 1 already. So that could definitely be a major improvement to this. But yeah, anyway, it's pretty cool. Like some builds that come to mind is like Queen of the Forest Wind Ripper builds, or just Queen of the Forest bow builds in general. Spellslinger builds, so literally just playing Spellslinger. Like, you know, Spellslinger basically you have to reserve mana, and then you can then use I can't remember the barrage skill or whatever it is, or frenzy. Use a skill called frenzy with a wand, and then basically you just like increase the amount of frenzy. So you put barrage on frenzy, and it's just like base attack, and then you just need to have enough mana to cast the skill, and then you know you just blast away, and you can create some totally crazy combinations with that. But yeah, I wonder if there's a synergy where you could put the Gull on the woodland shrine with woodland shrines, and then have like shrines that you can pick up with the Gull with woodland shrines with innate blessing, and then you could have like crazy amounts of shrine buffs up all the time. I actually think that's pretty cool. I don't know what the Sacred Wisps do at this stage, but it's pretty cool, and I am keen to see what happens. I would assume this would increase your power, because usually when you play like with Sacred Wisps in Affliction League, or even if you use the tree in the Atlas Tree passive points, then basically it juices up your enemies. So +2 to maximum number of Sacred Wisps. I know there's a skill gem that allows you to accumulate Sacred Wisps as well. So that could actually be really cool, and you could create some totally crazy combinations with that. Okay, so the next one is Antiquarian, whatever that means. This is the Marauder. So basically what I can see here is like a total ridiculous amount of abuse for attribute stacking. So we've got Lion's Eye Bow, fast shot projectiles. So that basically means like when you shoot stuff that's really far away, you do 60% more damage. Kalguran armor is really interesting. Gain ward instead of 50% armor and evasion rating from equipped body armor. This is actually very similar to the Witch Hunter Ascendancy that's currently in Path of Exile 2. So I'm interested to see how this works. Starlight Reflector, 100% faster restoration of ward at 100% increased global defense. Like, we're aware that this is going to be abused for another ward loop build, right? Like, that is totally going to be another ward loop build. Like, that in fact makes ward loop totally cracked if you played it on this Ascendancy and then just like spec up into spellcasting, or potentially some sort of ward loop build that uses strength stacking and like Brutus Lead Sprinkler or something like that. So Runic Tablet, gain adrenaline for 10 seconds when your ward breaks. Again, ward loop. And then basically Lion Eye's Hair, your hits can't evade, can't be evaded, sorry, which is 100% accuracy. You never miss. 50% reduced dexterity, which you really don't care about. If you ran this on a melee build, this would be OP. Lion Eye Shield, negative 100 physical damage taken from projectile attacks. Gain 50% chance to block from equipped shield instead of the shield's value. Again, this is from the Warbringer Ascendancy and Path of Exile 2. And actually, this is like the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken scenario, because were these ideas they thought about in Path of Exile 1 originally that they put in the Path of Exile 2? Because if that's the case, then this is looking like a lot of ideas they just didn't want to run in the Path of Exile 1, and that's where they came up with a lot of so like, is it the case that Path of Exile 2 is a culmination of cutting room for ideas from Path of Exile 1? It'd be really interesting if they actually said yes to that. Turtle Shell, 1000% increased stun and block recovery is OP as hell. That means that you could use the block recovery like cast when stun. Actually, this would be like a default OP cast when stun configuration. So you could do like a cast when stun ward loop sort of thing or something like that. It'd be really weird. Goliath Knuckle, you have no intelligence and 150 plus to strength. Like if you're running a strength stacker and you're scaling strength percentage, this is totally OP. Whale Tooth Bangle, 1% increased duration per 10% strength. I'm not sure what you would use that on, and it doesn't say like duration of like ignites or something like that. So I'd assume it'd apply to things like Molten Shell or things that have a timer. So you could potentially have like permanent immortal call, for example, maybe. And you could create like an immortal build or something with this. This seems like there's a lot of combinations that we could use with this that could be really OP. But anyway, I'm pretty excited to have a play around with this. And we need to, unpack this a little bit to figure out how we could make some builds with it, because, I have no idea how to even approach this right now. It's just pretty crazy. But anyway, we'll find some combinations for this. I reckon this is like one of my favorite ascendancies so far. Okay, so the last one that they've revealed today is called Surfcaster, and this is from the Shadow. So we're abusing fishing rods, and for anyone who doesn't know about fishing rods, so we'll get to that in a moment. But basically, within the Tempest, enemies you kill are shocked. Shocks you inflict spread to other enemies within 1.5 meters. So that's proliferation. That's pretty cool. Brine Bound, 50% chance to grant freeze to enemies for 1 second when they hit you. Enemies you freeze remain frozen for at least 1 second. Again, not bad. That's a pretty good node. Stormy Seas, again, 100% lightning damage converted to cold damage. Your cold damage can shock. It's basically built-in Brotherhood rings or whatever it is. Pretty good. Glacial Wave, enemies chilled by your hits lessen their damage dealt by half of the chill effect. Enemies chilled by your hits have damage taken increased by chill effect. So a scaling chill effect increases damage, which is pretty cool. All damage taken, so we've got changing seasons. All damage taken from hits can chill you. The effect of chill on you is reversed. What does that mean? Chill reduces enemy action speed depending on, so basically that's like self-chill builds. Okay, all right. There's a ring that does. There's a ring and amulet combination that does that. But if that's how that works, it means you wouldn't need to do like self chill builds or whatever, or chill reflect builds and stuff like that. It'd be pretty cool. See what we can build with that. So Ghost of the Deep. You are touched by a tormented illegal fisherman, granting 20% increased damage, 30% increased attack speed, cast speed, and 30% increased movement speed. It's actually pretty bloody powerful. And then Beta Breath. All hits are critical strikes while holding a fishing rod. I don't think we realize how powerful that actually is. That's insanely powerful. Then we've got Screaming Reels, 50% more cast speed while holding a fishing rod. So you could have a wand instead of a shield, you would have a fishing rod. If I was going to do that, I'd just do like a crazy ES stacking build or like some sort of dodge build. Um, be pretty like you could do an ephemeral's edge setup basically, and then have in your offhand a fishing rod. Because fishing rods, what do they classify as? They are called a fishing rod. I'm assuming you can have, yeah, it's a fishing rod base. So this is a fishing rod. This is something that they tried in Path of Exile, never really took off. So you can get a fishing rod if you have a Fairgraves tricorn attached to your character. So it's a helm. This helm here in particular. So basically, yeah, this it's like it's pretty useless. You could farm this early to get a fishing rod, which is probably what people are going to do. And then I would actually do like an ephemeral's edge build where I do ES stacking to get tons of defense, and then run ephemeral's edge, and then basically run like these fishing rod nodes, and you would just do absolutely mental amounts of damage, like totally ridiculous amounts of damage. So sea legs, 30% to cold and lightning resistance. Critical strike chances increased by overcapping lightning resistance. Evasion rating is increased by overcapping cold resistance. So you could do like a crazy like ES evasion hybrid build with like, or just like an evasion build, or even like maybe a phase acrobatics build, and then just run like absolutely face peeling amounts of damage with having a fishing rod in your offhand and like ephemeral's edge or something similar to that nature. I'm not too sure. I think there's like a lot. There's a fair bit to be played around with here. Basically, this whole ascendancy provides you very little defense. Where like this is basically the only real defense here, but it's like pure unrequited offense. Thinking about this, like lightning strike could be really powerful, like a claw and a fishing rod or something like that. I don't know. There's some combinations there, but we'd have to theory craft this to actually make something out of this. But this could actually be really cool. Someone's going to come up with a totally insane build with this. It's going to be totally broken. I suspect there's going to be tons of broken build archetypes that we can make out of this, including like, you know, the Ascendancy that gives you, you know, buffs of Veil skills and whatever. It's like life stackers are going to be crazy. So far, I think I like this one the most, but then again, like, I don't know, I'm not too sure about that. This, you know, Daughter of Oshabi looks really cool as well, to be honest with you, especially with like the lesser shrines. I feel like this would probably be something that I would play with like a poison build or something like that. Maybe like oh, was it the grenades? What am I thinking of? Yeah, I have totally went blank on that. Concoction, Poison's Concoction. This could potentially be pretty cool, and could work pretty well with that as well. With Queen of the Forest or something like that. I'm not too sure. Like we'd have to have a play with it. But yeah, anyway, there's tons of really cool build options that I can see from this. Anyway, overall, I think this event might actually be pretty cool. And I would be recommending it. I hope they like make some of this stuff core. Like if the player base likes it, there's no reason why they couldn't like put it in the game. It'd be really nice to see fishing rods actually legitimately make a comeback into the game, because I think it was like a whole idea that you could use fishing rods for something, and then they did nothing with it, which is really disappointing because it's like a lost opportunity to create unnecessary meme builds. But yeah, anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and yeah, overall, like, let me know if you're going to join in the league, and also don't forget to like and sub to the channel, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.